All right, so let's get started. Today, what I think I'll be working on is I submitted a pull request to a piece of functionality in Azure Functions, and there were some comments that came back about the implementation. And we pull up that pull request right now. This one here, did that about a month and a half ago. So there was an issue with the Cosmos DB input binding where certain types of I guess binding expressions weren't allowed, or that it was causing exceptions. So I attempted to fix it, and then submitted a pull request. And Brett and I think Matthias gave me some feedback on the fix that I submitted. So today, I think what I'll be doing is I'll be basically taking their feedback and make the change to my pull request and resubmit it and update it, I guess. All right, but before we do that, I think what I'll do is I'll show everybody what the problem is and what we're trying to fix. So we're in the Azure Portal, and we'll really quickly create a Cosmos DB database. We'll just call it test. What are we fixing here? Test SQL. See if that's taken. It's not taken. Good. And we'll just take the standard SQL interface that they provide and just put it in some random resource group. Let's create it. That's going to take a few minutes. And while that's happening, we'll create our Azure Function app. And also we'll call that test SQL. That's actually been taken, so let's call it test SQL 2. That's good enough. And we'll drop it in the same resource group. Which is test SQL. And everything looks fine. I think the database was in East US, so can I drop that in East US as well? And yeah, that sounds good. Bump up the size a little bit as well. So right now we have two deployments in progress. One is for the Cosmos DB instance, or the Cosmos DB account. One is for our function app. While that's happening, hopefully that comes back pretty quickly. So Azure Functions is pretty much all open source, I believe. And let's go to Azure Function. We can go to their GitHub repo. I think it's called Azure Functions under the organization Azure. And here it kind of shows you exactly where all the different repositories are that make up Azure Functions. So Azure Functions is actually built on the WebJobs SDK that came before it. So some of the stuff that, yeah, here it is right there. Some of the stuff that we'll need to modify if we need to do something with Azure Functions might actually be in the WebJobs SDK or the WebJobs SDK extensions. So the particular problem that I'm trying to fix is actually in the Cosmos DB binding for the WebJobs SDK, which lives inside the extensions repository. So a big chunk of Azure Functions is written in C#, so that's what we'll be coding in today. Although I think when we're playing around with Azure Functions here, you can see that both the Azure Function app itself and the Cosmos DB database have been deployed. And when we're playing around in here, we can use JavaScript. Azure Functions supports JavaScript, C# and F# with some previous support for languages like Java, things like that in their next version of the runtime. So hop in, take a look. So we can see we have the Cosmos DB account here. Just hop in there and take a look. So right now, what I've configured this Cosmos DB account to do is by default, we will be using what's called the document DB or their SQL interface. So it's still a document database, but you interact with it with a SQL-like syntax. But that's not the only thing that you can use to access Cosmos DB. You can also use any MongoDB client if you enable the MongoDB API in Azure Functions, or so in Cosmos DB. And you can also access it using this graph database protocol called Gremlin. And I have a kind of a sample app somewhere that does that, although I don't have that handy right now. And also supports Cassandra API and Azure Tables API as well. But today we'll be using the SQL API. So the first thing we want to do is create what is called a database, or a collection. Actually, the database already exists. Or does it? So we'll create a database called just testDB, and the collection was called test. And we'll go pretty much as cheap as possible, 77 cents a day. Click OK. And if you want to try out Cosmos DB, if you're in the Azure free trial in the free tier, they actually provide, I think, a year's worth of access to a database with basically the configuration I just created there for a year for free. And there's also another site somewhere if you want to try Azure Cosmos DB called Try Cosmos DB. And if you go there, what it lets you do is actually really quickly clicking one of these buttons, and you have to log in with, I believe, a Microsoft account. And really quickly, it'll give you one of these databases to play with. And I think there are already a bunch of them pre-provisioned, so you actually don't even have to wait like I did for the 3 minutes there for the database to come up. You pretty much get one right away to play with. And I think those are good for, I think, 7 days now, with the ability to renew it. I think every 7 days, I believe, but you kind of have to check on that. All right, back to our Cosmos DB. Oh, and Jeff King likes Cosmos DB. That's great. And Max likes Cosmos DB, or Max likes Jeff. Right, so you might want to take that conversation elsewhere, people. But I'm glad that you all like each other. So what we're gonna do, so we already have our collection created. We can drop some documents in there if we wanted to. We can probably pretty quickly create a Azure function that actually creates these documents in Cosmos DB. So an Azure Function app can hold one or more functions, and these are serverless functions, so you only pay when you execute one of them. And they're really easy to create. Just click the plus button and select a custom function. We'll select JavaScript, and we'll pretty much just take the defaults So what we want to do here is we can actually really quickly test out this function. So it's already HTTP enabled. You don't need to sign up in a separate HTTP gateway or anything. And there's a nice little testing tool here that you can use to, in this case, make a post request to the function itself. And if anyone else wants to try it, here's the URL. So we run that. You can see that the function started, it executed, and it came back with hello Azure. I know it's a little small there. So that worked. So just like that, we have a serverless function that responds to an HTTP request. So, so what we want to do now is actually connect this to Azure Functions or to Cosmos DB. And that's really easy to do as well. So another pretty cool thing with Azure Functions is that, and I'm actually wearing the Azure Functions shirt today, is that it has a concept of input and output bindings. So instead of writing code to actually connect to something like Cosmos DB or pretty much a lot of things, table storage, things like that, or outputs like queues, service bus, and Cosmos DB is one of the outputs as well. We can actually configure it declaratively versus writing that in code. So the code that we actually write for our functions is actually really clean. So that's pretty cool. So what we're going to do is configure a output binding for Cosmos DB. So we're going to output a document to our Cosmos DB. So, so here we have to define a few things. So the database name is actually testDB because that's how we named it in Cosmos DB, and the collection name is going to be test. And all we have to do here is select from my list of Cosmos DBs, and I think this is the one. So it's actually going to go off and talk to Cosmos DB and pull back the connection string and get the function configured properly to talk to Cosmos DB. And I think that's all we really need to do. And we save it. So now we've configured an output binding that will output one or more documents to Cosmos DB from our function. So let's really quickly get that to work. Right now, the function itself, let's see if I can bump up the resolution anymore without making it look weird. We can pretty much get rid of most of these things. So we can just respond with hello. That's how easy it is to actually return some payload from a function. Let's make sure that still works, because I might have lied. And yep, it works. We return hello, so that's perfect. So to output to Cosmos DB, I believe we named it. Go back and grab the name. So we named the parameter output document. I'll actually copy that. And we'll flip back to the function. And so let's do the simplest thing, which is actually output our request body to Cosmos DB. So all we have to do is we just go context .bindings we named it output document, so we'll paste that in, and then we'll set it equal to the request. I think it's just the body, and that should be all we need to do to take this request body and save it to Cosmos DB. Let's see if that's true. And it said success. So you can see that it says it was still returning the 200 and a hello. So what we want to do is actually open up another instance of the portal. So we can see, we can just toggle between database and the function app. So we'll search for this thing called, oh, it's right there, SQL. And if we go into the Data Explorer, what we would expect to see is one document. It added a bunch of properties to it that are internal to Cosmos DB, and also gave it an ID. But you can see that our payload of Azure actually went in there. So that's pretty awesome. With basically a line of code, we took the body of an HTTP request and saved it into Cosmos DB. So now that we kind of have had a little bit of an introduction to what this what Azure Functions is and what Cosmos DB is and how to connect the two together, let's take a look at sort of the problem we're trying to fix today. So to do that, we can create a new function. And we'll also, so we'll also make an HTTP trigger. Anonymous. We can actually rename this, right? So we can rename this to get documents, for example. Documents. And create. So once again, we have basically the same thing. What we want to do here is instead of writing documents, we want to read them. So instead of an output binding, we create an input binding. Oh yes, Tim. Yeah, I made sure I wore this T-shirt today. All right. Anyways, keep going. We will. So in order to read documents in from Cosmos DB, we will add an input binding and select Cosmos DB. Click Save or Select. And we can just leave it. Actually, what we're going to do is we'll actually eventually select more than one document. So let's call it docs. And the database name is testDB. Collection name is test. And so one of the easiest ways to, so what we can do is we can actually take stuff from the request and pass it and use it to select stuff in our input binding. So for instance, we can actually just supply a document ID right here. So the document ID, we can just more or less take this right there and just paste it in there and click Save. So that's all we needed to do to tell Azure Functions that when this function triggers, also go off to Cosmos DB and pull back, in this case, one document with that ID. So let's quickly see this print out. So again, we don't need any of this stuff. We literally have to just say context dot, I think response dot equals, and it's the context dot bindings, and I think we call it docs. So we're taking in this case, the document that came out of Cosmos DB and directly assigning it to the response in the output. So I think that's all it takes to make this work. Let's see if that's true. Typically, we'll be using a get for this. So let's run that. And you can see, again, in tiny fonts down here, that it actually pulled back the document. So that's pretty cool. So we can kick it up a notch and actually use, instead of hard coding the document ID we bring back, say we wanted to use a like a query string variable called doc ID. All we have to do is use little curly braces and give it the name of the, in this case, we want to use a query string parameter, so the name of the parameter. And that's all. And that's all we need to do to configure the binding to do that. So now, when we make this call, it might actually break because we didn't, and we got a 500 because we actually didn't provide a parameter. Let's do that. So we can really quickly add a query string parameter called doc ID. And hopefully that's still on my clipboard. Yep. So we'll provide the doc ID as a query string parameter and run that. Hopefully this time it worked, and it did, right? So those all took to tell Azure Functions that when it goes and off to Cosmos DB to pull the stuff back, to pull it back using that, to pull back the document with that ID based on the request headers. I actually made no changes to the code itself to do that. So so let's get to the problem. So so another thing we can do is pull back. Is to basically run is to use headers as well in these expressions. So a header would be, and this is like kind of undocumented, but it's possible. So you can just go headers.foo in here. So now what it's going to do is look in the HTTP headers for a value named foo and use that to create a database. And once again, if we just run this right now, it'll probably break. Yep, because that value is not provided. So what we can do is we'll copy that document ID again and actually remove the parameter, the query string parameter, and we'll set a header named foo to that value, and then we'll run it. So hopefully this time we will get back again. Yeah, so we got back the document. So that's awesome. All right, so now we know that headers work, or at least they're supposed to work. So let's see what the problem is. So in the input binding, instead of specifying the document ID, another thing we can do is go into the query, basically specify SQL query for Azure Functions to query the Cosmos DB database with. So, and as you would expect, is a very, very SQL-like syntax. Actually, everything I'm writing here is, I think, valid SQL. I'm just going to go select star from C, which is actually the collection that I'm selecting from, and that collection is indicated by this collection name right here. So it's just a magic word or a magic kind of identifier named C. So I'm going to select star from C, where in this case we can do like name equals, and I think it was called Azure before, right? So in this document here, we have a name property named Azure. So let's select like basically everything named Azure, right? So so what we can do is actually we can use the query string parameter again. So we can call it doc. In this case, it'll be called name. And click save. So now what it's supposed to do is that it's going to pull back everything with a name that's equal to a query string parameter named name. So let's do that and see if it works. So we'll add the parameter called name, and we'll call it Azure, and then run. So this should work, but it didn't. No. What happened? Incorrect syntax. Did I not? I probably didn't put a from there or something. Yep, select star from C. Click save. All right, now let's try that again. So we'll run it. And it still doesn't work. No. What's the error? Identifier name. Oh, yeah. It's a little bit tricky here. So what you want is actually not name. It's actually c.name. And we save it. So hopefully this will work now. Third time's the charm. Run it. And yep, it worked. And this time, again, this is a very small font, but it actually came back as an array because we can potentially get more than one document here. And we can actually see that if we just search for something named Azure 1, for example, we run it, we should get back an empty array, which we did. All right, so that's good. But remember that we can also supply header values. So in here, instead of name, we can say headers.name. And then we save that. And then we can go in here and remove the query string parameter and add a header name, and we'll call that Azure. And then we run it. And this is where I think it'll explode. And it did. Let me run that again so we'll actually see the error message come back. So here's the error message. Again, sorry, it's a little bit small, but it says error accessing name. Property doesn't exist. But that should work because that exact same expression previously worked in the input, in the document up here in the document ID, but it doesn't work in the SQL query. So that's what I've been trying to fix with this particular pull request here. So now that we know what the problem is, let's head over to the code. So this is already kind of like the first pass at fixing the problem. So I'll quickly walk you through that. So I'm making a change to the webjobs.extensions project, which is in this repo here, Azure/Azure WebJobs SDK extensions. And deep inside there, maybe we can kick into presenter mode. Hopefully that shows up a little bit better. It might be a little bit too big actually, but we'll see if this is going to work. So there's a class called CosmosDB SQL Resolution Policy, and its job is to basically take what we pass in with the binding to the function, which is the expression itself, which is this thing right here, the expression. It also parses out basically all the tokens in the expression. So at this point, we have basically the expression and the tokens, and it's up to the, in this case, this resolution policy to figure out how it's going to translate it into something that we can work with to query Cosmos DB with. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to come up with a parameter collection. So basically parsing, one thing that Cosmos DB allows you to do with the SQL API is that you can actually parameterize the SQL statement using, I think it's like an @ sign, and then @ and some kind of a name. And then when you actually make the query, you would create a list of parameters with the values and names that match the parameter names that you created. So that's what that is. And that's what this file does, right? So again, takes that string with some tokens and outputs some stuff that Cosmos DB can work with. So one of them is a parameter collection, and another is basically the new query, the query that Cosmos DB can actually understand. So it's not going to understand the query with the curly braces, but it will understand if we actually replace those curly braces with the parameter names and the @ sign. That's what we're going to do. And actually, that's what I've already done. So when I started with this PR, it took maybe an hour or so to actually find the location where this might be happening. So the first thing that I did was I actually wrote a test. So these two tests were already there. And funny enough, I added these two tests maybe a year ago. I think Jeff King, who's there right now, ran into this issue at a hackathon, or another issue at a hackathon um, with supplying a basically like the SQL querying wasn't quite working properly. So in order to fix it, the fix was actually really simple. I think the fix might still be there. Let's see if I can find it. Right here. So my fix, the fix that I submitted was actually like literally 10 characters long. I just added a dot distinct to that. But in order to submit that pull request, I had to prove that it works. So so that was when I added these two tests. So it says that Brett worked on it, and he was the only author, but that was because he it used to be called DocumentDB, so the file name used to be called DocumentDB, and now it's called CosmosDB. So he renamed it, and during the rename, my changes I guess got lost. So anyway, I added, so in order to show that this problem existed, I created another test that basically had some headers and also a query string. And then I try to run it through this resolution kind of policy. And what I'm expecting is that this thing right here, the headers parameter actually got converted properly to down here to say, let me get rid of this. To a proper parameter name, and that I'm also making sure that the parameters that that we're going to pass to Cosmos DB actually had the right values in it. So in this case, I wanted to make sure that there is a parameter named headers xms client principal name with a value of username, and also want to make sure that there is an ID parameter in the parameter collection with the value of foo. And I wanted to make sure that we only have two of them, because up here we actually have three tokens. I want to make sure that we're only supplying equal parameters for things that actually exist in the query. Hopefully that's more efficient. So that's basically what this test is doing. So we can see right now that it's passing. That's because I already made the fix. But what we can quickly do is actually don't know how. I'm not exactly a Git expert. Yeah, it was pretty awesome that they let me contribute before I joined Microsoft or Max. I can't believe that they let me do that. But anyway, I actually don't know how to roll back this file to what it was before. Because what I want to show is that after I added the test, I actually saw the exact same error message that we're getting in the console, which show that we're actually heading down the right path. So, so I'm using just this Git history thing in in Visual Studio. Let's see if I can just roll back this file. Actually, it might be that I can just, this is a really hacky thing I'm going to do. I just open that version. So basically, this is what the file looked like. It's quite a bit shorter than what it is now. And I'm just going to copy that, stick it in here, save it, and I'm going to do a build. Let me close these files. Close, close. So we're going to do a build, and we're going to run those tests. My machine's working really hard here. It sounds like a jet. So after the build happens, we'll discover the tests in, the tests will be discovered in here. So I've already kind of ran this once yesterday when I pulled open this project again. So let's see if the build is finished. So the build is finished. So hopefully the tests are updated now, and they are. So there's like a bunch of tests in here. So all I really want is to run the ones for Cosmos DB. And there are some that I'm going to expect that they're going to fail. And the ones that I expect to fail are the ones that are actually end-to-end tests that actually try to reach out and call a Cosmos DB instance that I don't have. But there will be one more test in here that I'm expecting to fail, which is the one that I added to prove the existence of the problem. So let's see if I can find that test. So that's this one right here. So all these other ones were basically end-to-end tests. You can sort of see in the mouse over the tooltip there. They're end-to-end tests. So I'm expecting those to fail anyway. So I'm hoping that those actually run as part of the CI process for this particular project or repository. But this is the one that failed, right? So we're actually clicking to that and take a peek at the bottom. It says error while accessing something, property doesn't exist, right? So I think if we come back to my function and hit that again, you scroll over, error while accessing name in this case, property doesn't exist, right? So we have shown, so we basically created a test that shows the existence of the problem. So that's usually the first thing that you want to do when you, hopefully your code base actually has a proper suite of tests. And when you first load the project, what you want to do is you want to run the test to make sure they all pass. And then you want to add a test that actually shows the existence of the problem. So that's what I did a couple months ago when I started looking into this. And then I made the changes. So let's flip back to the changes, and I have to figure out how to do that too. So I just have to undo these changes. So we're basically back to the latest version of this pull request. And again, I'll build it again. My computer doesn't melt. It's going to take a little while. Okay, so that builds. So I'm a little bit paranoid, so I'm going to go back and basically run this test again. So the easy way to run the test is actually just go in here into the test itself and run it from CodeLens. So that should only just run that one test. And I'm expecting it to pass. And it's passed, right? So it's green again. So that's the current state of the pull request. So if we kind of look at the discussion that we're having here, like I literally this was actually just a proof of concept about a fix. To be honest, I actually didn't really know how to fix it. So I just tried my best based on what I had in that file. And to be honest, I just basically just typed dot and just looked at all the different properties in IntelliSense, go to definition, stuff like that. Oh, and there was actually a pretty cool thing. I can't show you that anymore. When we actually ran into, like when I actually ran that test the first time and it failed, when the exception was thrown, when what I did just now, I ran it, but if I had basically debugged into it, we actually have this thing set up that's pretty neat. And unfortunately, again, I can't show you right now, is that there's some metadata that's been associated with this particular NuGet package I think for this particular project called webjobs.extensions. So it actually knows where the source of some of its dependencies are, right? So this particular package is dependent on some other things as well, I believe. So when I was debugging it and actually hit that error, I actually got this window that came up and says, "Hey, do you want us to pull down the source code for this thing that your project references so that you can debug into that?" And it actually went ahead and did that and pulled it down from GitHub, and I was able to F5 into the code, so I could actually see exactly what's happening. I believe probably like somewhere deep in the template execution logic. Maybe here. I'm actually not sure. Where it was actually taking me to the exact point where that's happening. So that was neat. So wish I can show you. Maybe next time I'll try to reproduce that again and have that show you. And talking to Fabio on the team, the functions team actually explicitly enabled that somehow in metadata. And I wish I actually remembered the name. You can actually see it in one of the options. And because I don't know the name, I wouldn't even know what to search for. But anyway, I'll try to figure that out, and maybe we'll do a quick session on that next time. What it takes to enable that. But what they were hoping to do is that it would actually help people from outside the functions team who don't quite have basically everything set up locally on their machine to still have a really good experience when contributing to Cosmos DB. And judging from what I kind of saw there, that helped a lot. So anyway, back to the pull request. We talked about a bunch of stuff. I think I addressed pretty much all of these. But there was a conversation about basically this piece of code here, and we can probably show that a little bit better in here, where, nope, maybe not here. Here. It was literally a hack. So at least I have it isolated off into a private function or private method. All I really wanted to do was come up with a parameter name, that started off as headers dot something and potentially has a dash in it, because that's typically a character that's allowed inside of a HTTP header parameter. So I was basically doing a hack saying, let's replace all the dots and the dashes with an underscore and just call it a day. And that worked awesome. But then, obviously, we had a conversation about what else is not a safe character and what else should we escape. So I think one of the things that I suggested, and at least nobody else said no to explicitly, was that instead of replacing all these characters and having to worry about whether or not there's going to be a collision, perhaps what we can do is just use a GUID, right? So one thing we want to do actually, before we actually even try this, is go in here and see whether or not something as long as a GUID is acceptable to Cosmos DB. So we already know that here we're basically just taking this name and changing that into a SQL parameter and using that exact same name as a SQL parameter and passing that into Cosmos DB. So what we can do is actually just go just type a really long name. There's 11 there, 21, 31. I think we're longer than a GUID now. So, and I want to copy that because I want to actually make this call. We'll save it and we'll go back into this function here and try to test it. So what we want to do is, instead of name, we're going to pass in, and we can't use headers right now because that's the part that's broken. So we'll pass in a parameter with that really long name and the value of Azure. So what we're expecting is that this should pull back that one document with the name Azure. And it does, so that works. So, so it looks like this proposed fix should work, however ugly that SQL statement at the end is going to be. And the other question, and the other problem that we're going to have is actually how to test it. Because the test itself right now explicitly looks for a parameter with a specific name, and also confirms, and it tries to confirm that we have this exact string outputted as the SQL statement. Oh, hey, Scissors. Just saw your comments just now. I don't suppose you're planning on working on adding Cosmos DB change feed trigger feature, are you? No, because I believe that's already there. At least I think it is. I haven't played with it recently, but that capability should already be there as a trigger binding. Currently uses the .NET change feed processor to basically do the work behind the scenes. Oh, you don't think it works with .NET Core? That's possibly what that is. Yeah. Actually, I think you might actually have to do something a little bit extra to get the Cosmos DB bindings to be brought into the version 2 of the runtime. I saw a GitHub issue come through, or maybe an email or something, saying that you kind of have to add that in kind of manually. At least it's not in the UI right now. If you're actually in the portal trying to and you've set your functions runtime to 2.x, and you're trying to create a Cosmos DB trigger or even an input binding, I believe that's right now not in the templates, but I could totally be wrong. I haven't tried it. So, the chances are that's coming. And another thing that you're going to see here is that, I'm actually really hoping that this pull request will still come through, or that they will still accept it, because I think lately they've been working on a branch called v2.x. So potentially we might have to kind of port it over to that new branch that they're working on for .NET Core, and basically version 2 of the runtime. Yeah, because if you flip over to thing right here, you'll see that there's some fairly recent commits, like 14 days ago. So there's stuff happening in here. Their default branch is still dev, and that's what I'm still going to keep making my pull request towards. But we'll see what they say. So long story short, I think if it's not there right now, try it out. Maybe using the CLI, the latest version of the cross-platform CLI, or look in GitHub issues, because I swear I saw something come through. All right. So I think the first thing we have to do now is basically, so now that we have a test that we believe actually shows the existence of the problem, and we have some code that makes that test pass. So right now it's fairly safe to actually either refactor the code or refactor the test, or refactor the tests. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to try to refactor the tests. Which, now that I think about it, is actually going to be quite difficult. Because we actually have a couple more other tests that are kind of dependent on those exact values. So we'll see how far we get. My plan is to go for about another half an hour here before I get hungry, and then that's all you're going to hear from my mic, is that you're going to hear my stomach growling. So one thing we can do is, instead of explicitly checking for these parameters, that maybe we can, and this is not something you probably want to do in a test, is actually write some imperative code to perhaps loop through your collection to actually check that certain things exist. Or worse, maybe find, so one thing you can do, and this is really bad, is we can probably call this var. This is the header parameter equals, and then resolved attribute dot SQL parameters dot. So we want to do a quick lookup in here. I think link. Wonder if link works. Let's see if I can get the enumerator. Nope. How do I get link to work here? Does anybody know? Yeah, coding with cookie. Yeah, that's exactly what I think that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Although like you try to avoid kind of having that kind of stuff in a test though. But anyway, I think that feels like that's the only thing that we can do. So perfect. Somebody said that I should add link to my usings, and you're right. System.link. Thank you. Your name is like really like it's really bad font color, so I can't actually read your name. I think it's Faucets. Thanks for that. So we brought that in. So hopefully now we have something that we can use. Perfect. That's exactly what that was. Thanks so much. And Scissor says, what did you want to do? That's a good question because I'm trying to figure that out too. So I'm literally trying to figure this out on the fly. So suggestions are welcome. So we're going to try to pull out the parameter with the value of username. It should just be first. Actually, you know what? There should only be one. There can only be one. So we're going to use single. And these are parameters. So I'll call it p dot. Hopefully it's a value, and there is. My last couple of streams I did JavaScript, so this might actually really mess me up because I'm jumping back and forth. So I'm going to look for the word username. And I think that is the header I'm trying to use. Yep. And it doesn't like that. So what does it want? Oh. What does it think it is? Oh, okay. I can do a toString on that so that I can check for username. And I'll do the exact same thing for the other one. And which is that is the query string. I don't even know what that other parameter is. Let's call it other parameter for now. There's a lag as I'm typing here. I think my machine's working really hard, which is fine because I type very slow. Hey, thanks for fixing your name and color there. Fossils? Anyway, yeah, it just happens to be on a gray background. And I have it on this TV here that has kind of like a pretty, feels like the contrast is turned way up. So some fonts are, some color on color are a little bit harder to see. So we're going to go p dot and to string. And I'm going to look for foo. So I think that those are going to pull back the two parameters. So, so I'm not even sure if I even need to check anything because there's nothing really to assert anymore. The dot singles, let's comment that out for now in case I need that again. But the dot single will basically guarantee that you'll either get that back or it'll just explode. We still want to make sure that there's two SQL query parameters. Let's just build it because I have no idea what I'm doing right now. What I find that when I use tests to drive my development, quite often I get into a state where I really don't know what I'm doing, and it's okay because I have a suite of tests that actually help me stay on track without even knowing what I'm doing. And it's still discovering the test. Come on, work a little harder. You can do it. There we go. We'll run it. Alrighty, so that still works. So I guess it's a good thing. Actually, what I will probably want to do is actually debug it to make sure that these things are actually coming back with the right stuff. Oh, it does another build. That's weird. I was thinking some more. Oh, nice. My machine's really slow, and now we're going to add more windows. That's really going to help. And then sometime within the next hour, I think this test is actually going to run. There it goes. Okay, so let's just F10 past those. And yes, we have a parameter, and that's the right one. We have the other one. That's the right one. So we're halfway where we want to be. So we have asserted basically, without using assert, that we have a parameter named username. We have a parameter named foo. So what we want to do now is we want to make sure that we have the right SQL expression coming back. So to do that, I think over here, what we want to do is just replace it with those values. That should just work. Let's see if that's true. So this one here is called, I think it's called other parameter. I'll have to fix that before we submit that PR. And we'll call this one, well, it's already been called. It's called header parameter. And those, that's just going to work. Actually, don't know. Again, it doesn't matter. That's what tests are for. Run this test. Hopefully they'll do a build. I think it does. There it goes. Actually, that's just going to totally explode. Oh yeah, thanks coding with cookie. Yes, that's a much better name for it. But I think my current problem right now is that this should, well, I'm hoping this will fail because otherwise something's really wrong. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it did. So I actually didn't do like I basically just passed it the whole parameter, but the parameter actually has a value. So I think just using the, oh, sorry, not the value. I want the name. And I think the name actually has an @ sign on it already. So let's remove the @ sign. And again, we'll do that dot name. And hopefully this will pass now. I think the shortcut to run the current test is Control R T. Maybe we'll try that next time instead of me scrolling around with these giant fonts. So I think it's building, I think it's doing stuff. What would I know what it's doing? Where it's going. There it goes, it's green again. So we're in a happy place. So basically we sort of refactored the tests so that it doesn't matter how we rename the values now. So to really drive that home, I think what we can do is we can actually just like change this parameter to like maybe more underscores. Save it. And this time we'll go do the Control R T. And I think Control R Control T is run it with debug. So it's going to run. There it goes. Going to be another. Let's run finish, and it's good, right? So what this says is that we can now rename our parameters to basically anything, and it'll be fine. So that's sort of true and sort of not quite true. So what I'm actually expecting here is that because I didn't refactor these other tests, that if I start changing these things to a GUID, it'll actually explode. Like it'll basically break these two tests. So I want to see if I can do this in a way where I maintain what I have up here without having to change the tests. And down here, we will basically use this new way of testing for correctness. And hopefully hopefully we can do both. What this means is that unless a given token is a dictionary, don't call, what's that thing called? Get SQL parameter name. So if we kind of highlight it, you can see that we're calling it here at add parameter. Actually, that's the only place that we're calling it. So what's calling add parameter? They're the two places calling add parameter. So in a sense, I really don't need to further escape that name if this thing is a token, or just basically a straight up string token. So I'm using C# pattern matching here. So here, so it'll only come in here when the token is a string. And if we are a dictionary, that's when we kind of go a little bit deeper. Oh, it looks like there's an overload. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I should know this because I wrote this code, but it's been a while. So, so you can see that I have a second token segment. So, well, let's just make this change now. I think one thing that's like, so I think we can do something in here where string parameter name equals, and then we're going to see if the second token segment is null. And if it's null, we'll just use the full token name. Otherwise, actually, now I'm having second thoughts here. We have this get full token name thing. That might be more useful. Okay, let's see. So So maybe in here, we can actually make that call. So what we're going to do is, in here, we're basically just going to leave it alone. But down here, we're going to actually try to escape it. Get SQL parameter name. Like that. So basically, if it's just a single token, we're going to assume that it's not a dictionary. And we're just going to use the name as is. It's only when it's a dictionary that we're actually going to try to do stuff to escape the name. Now that I talk it through, it might not actually pass code review. But let's just make this work. And then we'll refactor some more. Oh, one thing I forgot to do, which is like a little too late now, is I was actually going to go up here and actually type in, like, so in the top right corner of the screen, I have some to-dos. What I wanted to do was actually going to do something like, I'm going to do Azure Functions, overview of Azure Functions with Cosmos DB binding. And then obviously fix PR, update PR. Too late now. So that's what I wanted to try out. Anyway, I guess we can still do this. And I was going to strike through that. And this is the thing that we're currently working on. Oh well. Okay, so let's go back to the code. So this is actually sort of kind of going to work. What is the token name? Okay, token name is down here. Full token name is here. And we actually don't need that anymore. Remove that. We'll actually call this a SQL token. So in here now, we're actually going to do the escaping if we need to. So again, I have no idea what I've just done there, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to run the test. Control, what did I say it was? I think it was Control R, Control RT. We're doing a build again, and I really wish these tests ran faster, because what I like to do when I code is constantly run these tests so that I know that within the last, oh look, I broke something, which is good, bad? At least it caught it. Whoa, it actually came back to the error message we had before. Well, so now that this is actually happening, you know what? Let's see if I can show you that thing that I was talking about earlier. I don't know if I can make it happen, but let's see. And it might have already downloaded to my machine. So, so what I'm expecting it to do is actually be prompt me to debug into some piece of code that is part of a dependency that's actually not part of this code base. But I might have done it a couple months ago where it already kind of gave me that prompt to pull in the parameters, or to pull in the project. So you can see that it kind of exploded. Oh yeah, you can see that right here. It's actually inside of a folder called C users, my name, app data, source server, some really, really long GUID, and source. So basically what it did is actually, a few months ago when I did this, it actually went out and pulled down, when I hit the exception, it actually went out to This is part of the Microsoft.Azure.Function sort of .webjobs host project, which is in another NuGet package that this particular project depends on. It actually went out and pulled down and went to GitHub, pulled down the source code, and allowed me to debug into that, which is what we're seeing right here. So this particular exception is actually happening inside of code that's not even part of this project, and it's letting me debug into it. So that's pretty cool. So I'm glad that my failure here can turn into something positive. So I can show you that. That's not what I meant to do. So let's see what really happened. So we're going to try to get the SQL token. Oh, right. No, oof. Right or not right? Let's see. Get SQL parameter name. It adds the @ sign. Ah. So I'm really going to just break this entirely. Okay. Do some undo here. So I think in here, what we can do is we can escape, which doesn't exist, but it will in a sec. So we'll create another method called escape. SQL parameter name with the name, and that's fine for now. We'll take that out. We still have get SQL parameter name. Now we actually don't have to do any kind of replacement. All we're doing is we're just returning the name plus the @ sign. We really could have just added an @ sign there. And in fact, that's what we're going to do. So go up here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to take an @ sign and add it to the full token name. There it is. And inside the get full token name, we're going to now instead call escape. So now, whether or not it came through the first token name, that is going to have an @ sign appended. And if it's a complicated token, which has a dot and some other stuff, we're also going to escape the parameter name. So we're going to hope that that actually works. Control RT. And we wait. There it goes. Discovering tests. And it's still red. Oh no. This is bad. That doesn't exist. What have I done wrong? So I'm going to put a breakpoint here. I'm going to debug this test now. Control R, Control T. And the window layout looks a little bit different this time because I'm debugging. So we're adding a parameter. It's called ID. The token is add ID. So far, so good. The next parameter, ooh, it's already exploding. Might actually have to use my brain for this one. Alrighty, what's happening here? anyone sees it, let me know. Well, I should have looked at that stack trace a little bit more closely. I'm calling template bind, and that's where it's exploding. So I think it's one of the very last things that I'm doing. So the parameters weren't set up properly. So when I add a parameter, I was going to undo a bunch of stuff. Get back to the drawing board. This is where a git commit would have helped. I don't need this. Make that go away. What did that undo just do? Where's my cursor? All right, so I should be back to the way it was. Okay, let's just make sure this works again. We're running the tests again. Really wish there was a faster way to run these tests. I'm hoping they'll turn green again. Otherwise, we got some issues. And good, it's green. All right, let's really think about what's happening here. So, policy here. So what I really want to do is only escape, basically only run this thing when, make sure there's only one instance or one call to it, and there is only one call to it. I only want to run that when it's a kind of a complex parameter. Otherwise, just use the name as is. That way we don't break the other tests. That might not be such a great idea, but let's see if we can keep doing that. Let's find out what the problem is. Sadly, I have no idea. Let's see. So I'm adding parameters in here too. Okay, so if it's a string, I add parameter. Otherwise, I add another parameter. So this code does some kind of bit of hackery to basically make it do what we want it to do. And some of this code was already there before. And at first I was like, it's a little bit hacky. But then looking at kind of like the APIs that were available from some of these other things, like what's available in the token, for example, like the template itself. There really wasn't a good way of kind of generating this SQL query with the parameter names. So what we ended up doing, and I think a lot of this was already there before, was that we would generate a dictionary of replacements. And that and then what we do at the very end is, you can see here, and this is the part that's breaking, is that we're using the template bind parameter or the method, which normally actually takes all the parameters that were passed, like all the binding parameters that we have available, and basically do replacements in our string expression. But what we're doing here is that we're kind of hacking a little bit around that. And instead of passing in the kind of the binding parameters that we have coming into the method call. If I can find that. So that would have been this thing, the binding data. So normally, like I think 99% of the time, most of the bindings will just call the bind method of the template with the binding data. So it actually basically replaces what's in the we replaces placeholders inside of the binding expression, or like the actual expression itself, with data from the binding parameters. But what we're doing actually is that instead of passing that in, what we're passing in is the new name of the parameter. So what we're passing, like, so what's in that replacements array, or what we want to be in that replacements array, is that we want to say foo is actually equal to at foo. So when we actually run that template.bind method, it will basically generate this string for us with these values. So something has gone wrong there. And I think I sort of know why. I just don't remember where the code is. So let's see. So we want to focus on here. Aha. So add parameter. Okay. So add parameter has a side effect, I think. Does it? It does, is the second parameter. Oh yeah. That's when you know that you're writing not readable code, when a month and a half later you can't even read it yourself. So these tokens here. So inside of this method, we're actually adding in the tokens, and I think in here that's where we're actually messing up. Trying to figure out why, because it should still work. So so what is happening up here is that if it's a string, we're relying on the add parameter to actually add it to the replacements. But if it's if the value is actually not a string, it's actually an object, so or basically a dictionary. In the case of headers, that's what it is. It's actually like instead of a string, the headers is actually a dictionary. So the header would fall into here. So instead of adding, telling add parameter to add directly to the replacements collection, we're adding it to another dictionary first, and then we're adding that dictionary to the replacements here, so that for the headers, you actually have headers with a dictionary underneath it. So something has gone wrong here. I'm trying to figure out why. So here, what we want to do is we want to keep replacing so we're always escaping it here, which is fantastic. So first thing we want to try is, if we didn't do this, and we did that out here, that should still be fine. No problems there. There's nothing else that this method is doing besides remove unsafe characters, which is not necessary. when you have a single, or is it? Dang it, why is it so complicated? So one thing I want to try out, actually. Let me make it back to the way it was before. Take a look at whether or not we can just replace this with a GUID, and everything is still fine. Because that's eventually what we want to do. It's going to break the first two tests, which in a sense is sort of fine. We could actually, it might be easier to fix those first two tests to actually work with this new way of doing things. But let's see. So how do you generate a GUID? So it's like something like GUID dot new GUID. Okay, dot. I think toString takes something. So it takes a format. So NDP. So we can quickly test that out. I think. See if I have a C# interactive window. We can fire up one of these C# interactive windows and actually just test it out. So we can go system.GUID.new GUID dot toString. It gave a bunch of options. Is it D? Let's just try them. Oh, it's not JavaScript. How do I get that command to go back in C# interactive? Alt up arrow. There we go. Oh, come on. Still has dashes. Maybe that's not the one. Does anybody know? I think one of the other options was N. Let's see if N does anything. Oh, this might be it. So this gave me a GUID without dashes. That's lovely. So it's N. We think it's N. We'll pass in N. And that should give me a GUID. So what I'm expecting here is that this test will still pass, but the other two will fail. And let's look at the output. Still building, so that green check mark doesn't mean anything right now. I discover the tests. I'm gonna run them. And it's finished. So we have a green, so it still works. So what we had planned to do still works. What it also means is that up here, come on. If I just reran all the tests that are related to Cosmos DB, what I would expect to see is that those other two tests will not be read. Because instead of goo here, we have some GUIDs. Oh, and we're no longer using this, so we can actually rip that out. But let's see how the tests are doing. So a lot of things have failed. So these two are the ones that I'm interested in. Because these two used to pass. Well, the first one still passes. That's questionable. No, I'm a little worried about that. Oh no, it's red now. It just wasn't showing red before. It took a while for that to kick in. So yeah, so these two are failing. This is exactly what I expected. We look at the reasons why they failed. Yeah, I couldn't find the parameters. I couldn't do anything, right? So it failed here. And that's because that's now a GUID. So see if we can make one more attempt to try to fix that in the code versus in the tests. But it might be that we just need to fix the tests. Yeah, now that I think of it, we might want to fix the tests. Because how we generate that SQL statement is really an implementation detail of the library, or basically this policy here. Did the tests actually tie it down or pin it down to actually generate with the right names? I don't know. That is a good question. But I'm really curious why it wasn't working before in the way that I was trying to change it. So let's just take a quick stab at it. Maybe what I want to do is commit my changes right now. We'll call this change SQL parameters to GUIDs, and we'll just commit. So that way, if all else fails, we can go back to this. So I can kind of go on and do what I was thinking of doing before, which is get SQL parameter name. We'll now, oops, we need an @ sign there. So now what I want to do is only we'll rename this to escape so that it makes a little bit more sense. Rename. Parameter name. All right, so is there a way to only escape this when I need to? I think yes. But why was it not working before? I really only want to escape it if I have two segments. This is a bit of a magical rule. Let's see. So if the second thing is empty, just use that. Otherwise, escape that. So why would it not work? I'm very confused. Try that one more time. To be honest, we're no longer escaping it. We're actually just generating a random one. So here we no longer need to escape it. We just need the full token name. And then the token name, that's still okay. I'm actually really surprised that that failed before. Save it. Let's rerun our tests. So it's these two. Really figure out how to run all tests in a file. Does anyone know how to do that? Is there even a way to do that? I guess I can change it around to class. If I sort it by class, it'll be like a bajillion class. But we have this thing right here. Oh yeah, there it goes. So I can just run these three. So I was really surprised that what I did earlier actually broke all the tests. Because I don't expect it to do that. So building, so that these are grayed out now, so the tests are running. Come on, please stay green. Oh, one of them failed. But that is okay. So it's failing because crapping out right here. So let's put a breakpoint there. And I'll just debug this one test. See what's wrong. Building, running, doing something. There it is. So let's take a look at the replacements. So I think the replacements might be what's wrong. Now we have ID and headers. And it's going to try to replace. Yeah, with ID and headers. Well, headers have nothing in it. That is why. Why do they have nothing in it? So what we're expecting to do is that as we're for eaching through here, we're looking at if the token is in use. Interesting. Let's rerun this test and debug it earlier. Whoa. All right, that's enough. You don't want that either. Get rid of that breakpoint. We'll go in here. Go and debug that. What I'm expecting is that perhaps it's failing this particular test right here for whatever reason. And I'm going to find what, figure out what this particular piece of code is. So we're actually going to step into. So we're actually looking for, is there a thing called tokens? Is there an XMS principal name in tokens? It should return yes, right? So my question is why it's not returning yes. So let's Or my guess is that it's not returning yes. Let's step into it. Whoa. Just did something bad there. Apparently left F11 makes intercepted by the Mac. Oh, that's no good. So we'll step into with this button here. Oh, okay. So it's making this get full token name call down here. I didn't catch that. So my guess is when it does that, it's going to basically return a full token name that, like, there's no way it's going to find that. So that is the reason why the test is failing. It's because I've broken this piece of code here that also tries to use the get full token name. So it appears doing it inside of a get full token name, probably not the right place to do this because this thing's being reused. So we'll rip that out. And okay, so this makes a lot of sense now. So it's actually, yeah, so something else is calling that get full token name. If this thing actually uses the, if this thing actually does the escape in there, then it's not gonna be good. So so what I'm gonna do is, oh man, this is not good. Um, um, oh, yuck. So we'll check whether or not the second token name is empty. And if it's empty, we're just gonna go equal token equals full token name. Otherwise, equal token, it's gonna be the escape version of that thing. Ugh. And then we're gonna use the SQL token. So this is gonna work, but no way this is gonna pass code review. So we're building again, running the tests, keep this window open so we can see progress. So they're grayed out right now, so the tests are running. And what I'm expecting is that they should all be green now. Did I just run the one test? Oh, come on. All right, let's do it again. This time we're gonna run all 3 tests to make sure that they're all green now. We can actually turn on live unit testing. I actually don't know whether or not that would be faster or slower. The build seems to take quite a while, so I'm not sure whether or not live unit testing would help me there in terms of keep coming back to checking on the status. So we made it work by putting in some pretty yucky code. Like this is a bit of a magic here. Trying to understand what we can do to fix that. The easy thing to do, well, not easy thing to do. One thing I could do, not fantastic, is just quickly introduce a local. And I'll call it needs replacing or needs escaping. So now the code is slightly more readable in that if it needs escaping, well, actually that's the opposite. Now we're going to switch this around. Well, what have I done? Bring that down, bring this up. So if it needs escaping, then we're going to escape it, otherwise don't. We can sort of turn this into something slightly better now. Which is SQL token, nope, string SQL token. So in this code base, they don't use any vars, so I'm just trying to stick to that. Although personally, I love vars. I var pretty much everything. So now we can actually check if it needs escaping. If it does, then we'll, no matter what, we're going to append the @ sign to it. And we'll put a bracket around it to make it a little bit more readable. We're going to escape it. And then that is the full token name. Otherwise, let's use the full token name. And I'm missing a bracket. That's good. That makes this chunk of code a little bit nicer. Is that going to pass code review? Who knows? So let's hope so. It's going to generate some discussions, that's for sure. We made some changes now. So you can see by the green. Actually, no, that's basically the latest batch of changes I've made. Oh, Max has some comments. Let's see, move some stuff around. Line 89. Oh man. Yes. Oh, I can't. You know what? I can't wait to be able to try that live kind of like code sharing thing, so that you can literally be in there editing my code, or at least pointing it out. So what were we too late? Do I still need the brackets? 79. Okay. 79. Am I here? 79. Sorry. Do I need the brackets? Technically, probably not. First of all, I don't know the order of operations. The other is, I like brackets even when it's not needed to group together things that sort of belong together. Unless you're not talking about these brackets. But I would say usually you're like, I wouldn't be surprised if you're right about whatever brackets you're talking about. But if you talk about these ones, that's why I have them there. I put them there so that people know that things belong together. But anyway, let's save it. We'll quickly run those tests again. And hopefully it's going to pass. hopefully everyone's got exciting plans for the weekend. In Vancouver, we actually have a long weekend. Monday is Family Day. There's other kind of provinces in Canada that that celebrate Family Day as well, but they do it the Monday after, so like on the 19th or something like that. So in the States, I actually don't know when your next holiday is. I think there's one in February, isn't it? Oh, nice! Happy birthday to your daughter, Max. Um, that'll be fun. Where's my invite? Am I coming? And Paw Patrol themed. Yeah, my kids were actually really sad yesterday because they flipped on Netflix. They were gonna watch some Paw Patrol because Daddy was in charge, so released Netflix. Um, and they realized that they actually watched all 13 episodes of the latest one. They assumed that the latest season had 23 or something episodes, but they learned yesterday there was 13, so they had to find something else to watch. There's a little bit of disappointment there. So anyway, that passes. On the 19th is a holiday in the States. Oh, well, then we're going to talk to the people in my province to make sure that we kind of have a holiday, aligned with everybody else. Because I know there's probably 3 or 4 other provinces in Canada that have Family Day or whatever day, or whatever they decide to call that holiday on the 19th as well. So I guess I'll be all lonely here in Vancouver on that day. So anyway, I think we're in pretty good shape. You know, I'm hungry. Some other people might be hungry. So let's just quickly wrap this up and blindly push this up to GitHub because that's what we do. We trust our tests. Actually, one very last thing I want to do is, and this is just me being, I don't know, a little bit cautious, I guess, is I'm just going to rerun all the tests that fall under Cosmos DB, and that should be fine. So the ones that are end to end will still fail, but what I want to make sure of is that there's nothing else that is failing. Pull this out further so we can actually see more of that name. So there'll be some stuff that failed, but all the ones that failed are end-to-end tests, and everything else passes. So I think we're in good shape. We'll actually just amend the previous commit. I think I could do that. Yep. So boom, just like that. Amended. Just quickly take a look at my changes. History. I think I can see, there it is. So I can quickly kind of take a look at what changed. Kind of get an idea what kind of questions are going to get asked. Oh, right. One thing I wanted to do was fix those names at the end. Okay, so we actually didn't make any too many big changes here. We actually made a tiny change here and a tiny change down there. And it all kind of worked. So I think that might actually be okay if they're okay with the code that was there before. This isn't much worse. I know it's not saying much, but I mean, now let's fire up the tests. The tests will have more stuff in it. So yeah, that's one thing I wanted to do, and it was mentioned by Andrew, coding with Cookie there, was that need better names. So this will be the name parameter, and this will be the ID parameter. Build. And that builds. Come on, one last run, I guess. Once it's done discovering the tests. Come on. I'll just use the shortcut to run the test. There it goes. Still passes. We're good. And let's amend that commit again. Thanks, Coding with Cookie, for suggesting the names. I go back to changes. I go amend. Then I'm good. So then I'll just push it. And then everyone can look at it and make some exciting comments. I guess I have to figure out where I'm pushing it. I want to push it there. And there it goes. Not complaining, so I think it's pushing to the right place. Quickly go back to GitHub. Yeah, that's if I had a command line here, Max, I would totally use the -f. Actually, it's supposed to be -- force with lease. Apparently that's a little bit better than -f. Don't know the technical reason, aside from more typing. But that's what I was told. That's slightly better than force. So let's take a look at my pull request. Probably building now or something. You should say that I pushed the commit, right? So there's my commit. It's going to run some tests. The last time it ran these tests, or at least the build, it didn't work. They didn't seem too upset by that. I remember the first time I ever modified this code base. I don't think that worked either. And I think Matt, who was on the team at the time, did something, and it worked. So I'm not too concerned about that. I pushed the change. I'll probably put a comment later to say, hey, I made some changes, made it more complicated now. What do you think? And kind of keep this going. Hopefully that this will address kind of some of the concerns from before, and get it to a point where we can get it into, get it merged into first the extension, and then eventually that'll get pulled hopefully into the WebJobs SDK, as well as the Azure Functions runtime. Pretty excited about that. So, yeah, let's go back to our little checklist, because I did all that work to put that there just to not use it. So I'm going to use that. Right through. There you go. So we did some Azure Functions, learned about how it works with Cosmos DB input and output bindings. We did some stuff to kind of update this PR that I submitted a month ago, and then we basically pushed it to GitHub. So now that's available for everyone to see. So I think this is a good place to stop. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.